It's Monday, August 29th.
From inside the WTOP newsroom, this is the DMV Download, brought to you by the men and women of Steamfitters Local 602. Get an estimate and learn more at steamfitters-602.org.
The DC sports and crime worlds clashed this weekend when two teens tried to carjack Washington Commanders rookie running back Brian Robinson and shot the star player multiple times. Megan is learning more details about what happened from her law enforcement sources, and we talk about how prevalent this type of crime is in DC.
These things happen in seconds.
Yeah.
I mean, the groups that do these carjackings, it's like they move in without you really seeing them, and they jump in the car and they go. Like,
Right.
we're talking like a 10-second crime.
Draw a gun, get keys, take the car.
And this obviously has the potential to be a huge hit for Washington's football team. We talked with WTOP sports director George Wallace about what this means for the Commanders and their roster decision as the season is about to begin.
He was drafted to be, eventually be the starting running back, and I think he was going to be that.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Megan Cloherty.
And I'm Luke Garrett.
We're now piecing together what happened on 10th and H Streets Northeast yesterday evening when Brian Robinson was shot multiple times during this carjacking attempt.
And Megan's been on the phone all morning and yesterday evening as well, getting the details from her sources throughout the law enforcement community. So we don't have the whole picture yet, Megan, but it's coming together. So let's start with the carjacking and shooting.
Yeah.
Where did it happen exactly?
So Brian Robinson was at Crab Boss, which is like a really good seafood place that has a like all-day brunch on Sunday, just FYI if you're looking for something. 10th and H Streets Northeast. And he is out of his car when he's confronted by two teenagers. DC police say they were between 15 and 17 years old. The descriptions are really vague, so beyond that, we don't want to really say much more. It's not going to help us find him.
Right.
Chief Conti says Robinson fought back against one of the gunmen.
Okay.
And was shot by the second. His car was a Dodge Charger Hellcat, which is kind of a cool-looking Charger.
Muscle car.
Muscle car. It was a white car with like a black stripe. So it was not like, neon green, but it was a little showy.
Right.
And it stood out on the street.
Okay.
So he's shot. My law enforcement sources tell me that he was shot in the hip and he was shot in the leg. That's new this morning.
Got it. And just for the listeners to know, this is where Ben's Chili Bowl is, kind of the area.
Yeah, there's a lot of restaurants down
Right.
there.
I
lot
mean,
of
it's a
bars,
hopping area.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there would have been a lot of people around too. So it is sort of surprising because it was just so busy. And,
Right.
and at 5:30, obviously, it's still lit outside.
Right.
So this happens and, the scuffle happens. I don't know if Robinson was with anyone else, like in his car or was nearby with him, but somebody drops a gun. One of the teenagers drops a gun, according to this law enforcement source.
After the scuffle.
Or during or whatever.
Okay.
They find the gun later, and the ATF, I understand, is now tracing that gun to see, obviously, if there's any fingerprints, if it has a history of other crimes on it, that they could possibly track down these suspects.
And do we know if they took his muscle car? I mean, did they take it or was it left there?
They didn't take it.
Okay.
They fled and they got back in their car and drove off. And it turns out from Robert Conti, chief of DC police, we learned today that car was stolen. So it had been stolen out of Prince George's County on Friday. And then Sunday night, rather, they found it abandoned, that same car.
And the teens have not been found.
Right.
And they're still on the loose.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, the description isn't going to help us. So it's a matter of like, you've got to think that there's surveillance down there they're going over, witnesses.
Right.
But I mean, from everything we've heard about carjackings and how like prevalent this crime is, and we could go into the numbers next, but these things happen in seconds.
Yeah.
I mean, the groups that do these carjackings, it's like they move in without you really seeing them, and they jump in the car and they go. Like we're talking like a 10-second crime.
Draw a gun, get keys, take the car.
Yeah. So sometimes people who may have been just like right on the street may not have known it was going on until those shots were fired, obviously.
Right.
But they try and do it really, really fast. So it's just like you're caught off guard and the car's gone.
I mean, and let's get into the numbers here. You've been pulling some, data from DC's crime log. What are we seeing? What have we been seeing this past summer?
So we've been talking about really since the pandemic began, how carjackings have just gone, just skyrocketed as a crime. And not just in DC, I will say.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, all over our area, but also all over the country. Year to date in DC, there have been 326 carjackings, which is not nothing.
No.
Obviously, there's an interest in Brian Robinson, right? Because he's this all-star running back.
Yeah.
He was the hope for the team.
Massive potential.
Right. A lot of people are interested in this guy.
Yeah.
But, if this has happened to your mom or your neighbor or your coworker, it's just as big of a deal. So I don't think we should minimize how many people this has happened to. And this is just in D.C., right? I mean, we're not talking about Maryland and Virginia. Carjackings involving guns in D.C., 73% of those 326.
So most are really dangerous.
Yeah,
weapons are
guns,
involved.
right. Yeah. And 87 of those 326 have been closed, meaning, they found the person who was responsible and there was some kind of end to it. Now, Chief Conte spoke today and he called this incident a reckless use of a firearm.
When you talk about people using firearms in communities, that make people feel unsafe, and we want to be there to support community members, but also lock up bad guys and hold them accountable for their action.
WTOP's John Doman was down there, and we also spoke with Charles Allen, who's council member and chair of the Public Safety Committee. And he was saying, he kind of brought up that idea that this is a problem regardless of who you are.
Right.
I mean, this is a safety issue.
There's a lot of victims of crimes that aren't going to get this level of attention as well. And so that's, our priority is just as much for him as it is for anybody else.
And Megan, you and me sat down with D.C. Police Chief Conte on June 6th, right at the beginning of the summer. And we brought up this issue of carjacking. And he really said it's what keeps him up at night.
I just get the sense, and this is just me, people are at a different place right now. Tension is high, and people, the tolerance that people have, for one another. I mean, anything. I mean, just it throws people just off the rails, and at a level right now that I have not seen in a very long time.
And it seems as if this carjacking prevalence and problem is still ongoing. When we look towards the realm of solutions, what's out there?
I mean, I don't think anybody knows. I know the mayor today praised Conte, and so did Charles Allen, for really connecting with, they say, regional partnerships. That just means knowing what's going on in Fairfax, what's going on in Loudoun, what's going on in Montgomery County, and seeing, okay, these are cars. Clearly, they cross state lines. They cross jurisdictions. Can we band together here and kind of start tracking these criminals together? And I think that has happened. They have this regional task force that's all about carjacking. We spoke with Fairfax County Chief Kevin Davis.
Yeah.
He said it was something that was really on the top of his priority list because talk about feeling unsafe, at the grocery store or near your house, wherever these things happen, especially if somebody's pointing a gun at you.
Yeah.
So as we know, these things can really become dangerous. With Robinson getting shot, and we hope obviously he makes a quick recovery, but yeah, the numbers don't tell a really happy story here. And it's kind of, we're hearing from law enforcement across the board. Obviously it's a gun problem.
Yep.
Obviously it's they're getting away with it. If you've only solved, 87 of 326. So it could be the same kind of groups of people who are out there.
Right.
That's been discussed as well. But as far as an answer, I don't think there is one right now.
Yeah. And, it reminds me, kicking it back again to our conversation with Chief Conte, he talked about how to best treat these criminals who are teens. How do you do that? How harshly do you punish them? Where do you put them back in the community? And he brought up an interesting point where he said, I'm actually scared for these teens themselves because they end up getting killed and hurt a lot of the times too when they draw a gun on someone. It creates an awful situation for literally everyone involved.
Absolutely.
Well, we'll be keeping an eye on, Robinson and his recovery, and also how leaders around our region really respond to this ballooning problem of carjacking.
And after the break, we're going to talk to WTOP's George Wallace about what this could mean for Robinson's career and what it means for the Commanders' upcoming season. Backed by the experience of its hardworking members, Steamfitters Local 602 is ready to take on your next commercial, heating, cooling, HVAC, or refrigeration project. Steamfitters Local 602 adds value to our community through its partnerships with local contractors and building owners, all while keeping the focus on improving the lives of its members and their families throughout the DMV. For work that's on time and on budget, go to steamfitters-602.org to schedule your next project. That's steamfitters-602.org. Steamfitters Local 602, changing lives.
Thanks for listening to the DMV Download. If you like this show, give us 5 stars and leave us a review on Apple Podcast.
We love hearing from you guys, and your reviews really do help other listeners find this, our area's only in-depth daily local news podcast.
And thank you for making us a part of your day. So clearly, this is going to impact the Commanders. During the NFL preseason, Brian Robinson emerged as a powerful running back. The third-round pick from Alabama showed great potential for this upcoming season. But after the carjacking and shooting, this all changed and was thrown into uncertainty.
Yeah, and we don't know, obviously, the severity of Robinson's injuries or what it means, how much he's going to miss, if anything. We turn now to WTOP sports director George Wallace to learn more about Robinson as a player and, of course, what this might mean to the team. George, thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
What is the team saying so far? I know this just happened yesterday, but what have we heard out of the Commanders?
Well, they had practice this morning, and then Ron Rivera said he has spoken with Brian Robinson, visited him last night, said that they don't know how long he will be out, but he is in good spirits, and that, obviously it could have been a lot worse. They're very fortunate about that it was not worse than that. But they don't know how long he's going to be out, where they're going to have to rehab or anything like that. But he has spoken to him a couple of times. He seems to be, for what happened, he seems to be doing okay. And then Brian Robinson actually tweeted this morning or put on his Instagram story that surgery went well and that he's already out of surgery. So we'll know more, I think, after.
That's good.
As we get later in today and tomorrow.
And moving to Robinson, as a player, what did he really show the Commanders this preseason, and how does this affect the Commanders as a football team?
Yeah, I mean, he was drafted to be, eventually be the starting running back, and I think he was going to be that. I think he had shown enough this preseason. Antonio Gibson was kind of penciled in as the starter, but he fumbled in the first game, and then Brian Robinson was taking first-team reps since then. So I think he didn't play the other night against Baltimore. He rested all the starters, so that was a good sign there. So I think he was set to be the starting running back, and now if it's, they could go a number of ways with it. If you put him on the non-football injury list, it's 4 weeks, and technically you don't take up a roster spot.
Okay.
So,
it's like a calculated sort of move right now.
Yeah, so if he has to miss 4 weeks. I mean, look, Antonio Gibson's been there, done that. I think they were expecting him to start the season as the starter, but the way Robinson has performed in camp, I think he kind of, look, the guy's from Alabama. He comes from a winning program. He knows what it takes to win.
He's kind of a big deal. I mean,
kind of a big deal.
Kind of a big deal, as Ron Burgundy would say. Alabama, last season he had 14 touchdowns, 1,343 yards, 6'1", 228 guys. I've looked up all the stats.
Impressive.
But I mean,
he's a beast.
It's just kind of a, to get shot in the hip and the leg and you're a running back.
Yeah. Yeah. When you hear
good.
that, it's not, right.
I mean, best case scenario, George, he misses 4 games, probably.
Probably, yeah. But again, I have no idea. But yes, because here's the other thing: the roster.
He had surgery. I mean, he's gonna. It's not like it's like a raise.
He's not playing in 2 weeks.
Right.
He's not playing in 2 weeks. He's got to. They have to have the roster down to 53 by tomorrow. So, to your point, Megan, calculated the way they're going to do the roster. You're not going to take up a roster spot. If he's out 4 weeks, and then when he comes back, then you'd have to cut somebody else. So, a lot of moving parts, and that's the other thing with, as Ron Rivera told us this morning that, so after the preseason, the end of the last preseason game, next couple of days, coaches meet. They meet separately, and you kind of put your roster together, then they meet together, and they kind of go through cuts. So this is kind of putting them behind the 8 ball, so to say, also because they have all these meetings set up, and then they go to the hospital last night. They got the,
Right.
So, they have to have this done by tomorrow. And a lot, there aren't many spots up for grabs on this team. I think a lot of it was set. A few positions with some depth issues that they were probably guys on the bubble that whether a couple guys played their way onto the team the other night against Baltimore, we don't know.
Right.
So they're kind of a little bit behind now
right.
with that. So it's going to be interesting next 24 hours or so.
Yeah. Do you see them pulling in another running back?
They could keep somebody else on this roster for a few weeks until he's back. Or, I saw a stat that 860-some players are going to get cut. So coaches... whatever the roster is tomorrow, whatever the roster is tomorrow at 4 is not what it's going to be on opening day. So a lot of, coaches will keep somebody, then they'll go pluck somebody else off a waiver wire that was released by another team.
Right.
So, just maybe they got caught up in a number situation on another team. He's good enough to play, but
they
number
have to
situation.
release somebody who's good from the Falcons or whatever, and we can pull him in.
We've seen that a lot of times. So,
more changes to come.
That could, yeah. So that could be, something to watch too.
And when you look forward to this regular season, you've been at camps watching the team. What are your expectations for the Commanders?
Expectations. A lot of expectations.
Good or bad?
This team over the years. Look, it's year 3, and Ron Rivera has said since the end of last year, year 3 is the year you have to take the big next step.
Year 3 under Ron Rivera.
Under Ron Rivera, sorry, yes. And you have a quarterback now, a guy that Ron Rivera has said is his guy. Whether he believes it deep down or not.
He said it.
Seriously, yeah, I'm not so sure he believes that. But he's gone all out and put everything on Carson Wentz. So we know what Carson Wentz is. I mean, he's a decent quarterback, 60% completion, did throw 27 TDs and only 7 picks, I think it was last year. So he has the ability. It's just there's no secret. The biggest key to this year is going to be him, whether he stays healthy. And again, that's just the way it is in all of sports. If you stay healthy, it's a big part of it. But they do have weapons on this team if Wentz is able to stay healthy. And it's a night and day difference between he and Taylor Heineke. The defense can't be any worse than it was last year. I think they'll have to be better.
How's the O-line is my question.
That's the tough part, too. They have lots of injuries along the offensive line and then lots of depth issues,
we need
too.
to protect our guy.
Because you lost Brandon Sheriff also. So,
the guy.
do they have the ability to win 9-10 games? Yeah, I do. The way the schedule sets up.
Double digits. He's at 10.
I do. Schedule sets up nicely. They've got some weapons. You're playing technically a last place schedule. But again, that changes year to year in the NFL too. They have Jacksonville, Detroit, weeks 1 and 2, the 2 worst teams last year. They're getting better. Jacksonville's a new coach. So, but my point is, if you are who you expect yourself to be in year 3, I don't care how good Jacksonville is, how much they've improved. You can't lose that game. You can't lose to Detroit.
Right. You're set up to win. I mean, if you
wins.
don't win those 2.
Yes. You don't have many must wins in weeks 1 and 2. It's a must win.
Huh.
Okay? Write it down.
We're here for
Take
it.
a picture, record it.
I've written it down, George.
Write it down.
George Wallace.
But don't hold me to it.
With all of the optimism. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And before we go, just kidding, I'm not sick. But I want to talk about this new study that came out of the American Journal of Preventative Medicine that makes kind of an interesting claim. It says that if you take your sick days, you're actually going to live longer, or you're more likely to live longer, that is.
What? Why? Oh, just because of like the stress of working when you're sick?
Yeah, I guess so. And I think the study really doesn't totally answer the why. It just says it's like there's definitely an association between, men and women who take their sick days off live longer.
Okay, I just pulled up this article from The Hill that is breaking down this new research. And listen to this. Specifically, mandatory paid sick leave was associated with lower rates of suicide, homicide among men, and lower homicide and alcohol-related mortality among women. That's pretty morbid.
Yeah, but
that's pretty dark.
It is dark, but I guess it makes sense. Like if you're sick, you got to take care of yourself.
And I think
that's
also,
what I'm getting from it personally.
It is also speaking to mental health, too. I mean, I think if you're just overwhelmed and it's too much, obviously, I think that's when people push through.
Right.
I mean, at least, I don't know. It just seems like, I'm not really sick. Like, I'm not going to make anyone else sick. But yeah, you need that time. You need that break.
Totally.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. And the article also says that the United States is one of the only developed countries without a national paid sick leave policy. I mean, here at WTOP, we are we are lucky that we have paid sick leave, which is really nice, but not everyone in this country does, which this study maybe, I don't know. I mean, what does that say?
Right. It could mean that you just don't get paid that day or whatever it is, which obviously then it changes your mind as to how you want to take your sick days. That's interesting. Well, take your days.
If you're sick, take it off. Get some rest.
That's good advice for a Monday when we're all like, ugh.
I know.
And that'll do it for us today on the DMV Download. We are sponsored by Steamfitters Local 602.
Our managing editor is Craig Schwab, and our music is by Real World. Give us a review and rate our show if you get the chance, and while you're at it, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. You can also find us on social media where we're posting content every day, and you can find out more about this podcast and become one of our VIP listeners at dmvdownload.com.
The DMV Download is a product of WTOP News. Listen on 103.5 FM in the D.C. area, 107.7 FM in Virginia, 103.9 FM in Frederick, online at WTOP.com, and on the WTOP News app. Have a good night, guys.